Second. There we go. Okay, I'm going to start the Band of Brothers meeting. I will watch the participants list. I know a lot of people who said they're coming on. They're just running a bit late, but I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, especially Dr. Bittman's, because he's coming from across the country. And let's see, what can
Earlier
I say
here.
about Dr. Bittman? He told the story about a little girl in his office that I think I've used 100 times. My daddy doesn't get mad at me mad at us anymore because since he got adjusted, doesn't beat us up. I think it's one of the most profound things because if you listen to Dr. Stew Bittman and how he shares chiropractic, it makes it really simple about how the world can change through the power of an adjustment. He worked with Dr. Sigafoose, so he's got some really serious credentials. He was in practice for a long number of years, and he runs, I believe it's the Unity Church out there, Stu, right? Is that what it is? All right. So, Dr.
Not
Bittman, the
anymore. Not
floor is
anymore.
yours.
Not anymore, John, but
All
yes.
right.
All right. Well, hello. You know, nice to see you guys. How's Long Island?
Good. Cold and wet.
Okay. I don't know if you know this, John, but I grew up in Queens,
What part?
Flushing,
That's where
Kew
I'm
Garden,
from, too.
Kew Gardens Hills. Yeah, I think I knew that.
Yeah, Casino
Yep.
Park. Casino Park.
Casino Golf Course was my golf course. Anyway, yeah, and I went to Stony Brook. So yes, I have a Long Island
Oh, there you
connection.
go.
All right. Wow, I could have talked about a lot of things, but I think because almost exactly 28 years ago, I went on my first mission trip to Panama with Sigafoose and 16 other chiropractors. I think some of you have heard me talk about this, so if that's the case, you're going to hear me talk about it again. I guess because it's the anniversary and also because it's kind of the anniversary of the last time we went in 2017. Those trips are very alive in me. So if you haven't heard about them really quickly, the first time 18 of us adjusted like 46,000 people in 5 days. We just adjusted everybody in sight, from from drunks in the street to the first lady of the country. They let us into prisons and hospitals and institutions for special kids. And I mean, I could talk for hours about it, but the point is, it was incredible. It was simple. It was beautiful. It was chiropractic stripped down to its absolutely purest essence. And for the first time in my and probably everybody else's career, we were actually serving for the sake of serving and loving for the sake of loving and giving for the sake of giving. And I never got so much out of any experiences before or since. So because of the incredible circumstances, meaning like thousands and thousands of people waiting who don't speak English, and me being not very versed in Spanish and smart enough not to use any of it, we had to relate to people on a completely different level than I normally did in my practice. There was no attachments to anything that didn't matter. There was no um, there was no fluff. There was no doing anything just because of people's expectations or because of whatever. So a lot of the docs who went were frustrated because their conclusion was, well, it can't be that way at home. So I guess I'll just suck my thumb. That's a bit harsh, but that was essentially the attitude of a lot of the doctors, and actually their practices suffered for it. Some of them that I know of, because they thought the idea was to, have it be like Panama at home. Well, I just chose to accept the truth that the biggest difference in Panama was me and how I was. I was fearless. I was clear. I was not steeped in any kind of complications whatsoever. So I decided to pay attention to what the gifts that this experience gave me, so I could work on those things, so I could change me, so I could be the chiropractor at home that I was in Panama. That makes sense?
Perfect.
It doesn't mean I didn't like think about possibilities. I thought about hanging out with my mother-in-law and learning Yiddish so I could speak a different language from the people who came in. But then I realized That's not going to work because I could still understand what they're saying. I thought about, hey, let's get rid of the CAs and the telephones and the tables and get 4 black metal folding chairs and put them in a circle and go outside and yell, Mas vida aquí, more life here is about the only thing I knew how to say in Spanish, right? But somehow that was enough in Panama. So all the lessons that I learned were incredibly critical to my practice, to my career. They were critical to my success in chiropractic. Not only did I see the importance of working on myself as opposed to blaming others or blaming chiropractic or blaming the fact that Mercury is in retrograde or whatever I tend to blame things for my own perceived limitations and lack. I realized that again, I needed to work on me. But I also learned the power of non-attachment. Because as I said, when you can't talk to people and you don't know what their expectations are and you know they're not paying you, it takes away a lot of the mental attachments that I was getting hung up with in my practice. And I learned the power of presence because somehow, even though it was hot and it was loud and it was chaotic and it was noisy and it was, and kids were climbing up and down my leg for 5 hours at a time while I was adjusting, I never felt more present with people. It was like the only person in the universe was this person I was about to adjust, and the only time that existed was this very moment that I'm with this person. Tough to explain. I learned the power of intention, of pure intention. And I learned the power of simplicity, and I realized how much I was talking way too much in my practice and overcomplicating things tremendously. So I could talk about all those, but I'm not talking about those. I'm talking mainly about that because of all that, we had to rely on the chiropractic principle. I mean, what else was there? Couldn't take a history, couldn't follow up. Deprived of all the mental gymnastics and of any information at all about the people I was addressing, we had to rely on chiropractic's above, down, inside out principle. And what a gift. What a gift that was.
Stu, when I went
Yeah.
on a mission trip a year and a half ago, we're the only doctors that can do that. We don't need to talk to people. We just put our hands on them and we're innately guided. And a lot of what you're talking about is everything I experienced when I was on my mission trip. So thank
That's
you.
cool. You went to
I just
Haiti?
wanted to affirm. I went to Haiti. It was just what you were saying.
Haiti was going to be my first mission trip after Sigafoose went there 25 years ago, but I don't remember, but we didn't go. Anyway, yes. So I would say it's safe to say that you all and I believe that the greatest doctor in the universe is inside the person getting adjusted. Yes. That he or she is the one doing the healing. Yes.
Absolutely.
That when we adjust them, we're leaving them in the best and most capable and loving hands that is imaginable. Yes. As Sigafoose used to say, he didn't know how to cure a ham, right? So, and we also probably believe that to be the best possible healer, we have to be aware that we're not the ones doing the healing. Would we all agree with that?
Yep.
Got to get her ego out of the way.
Okay, so I believed all that too, but after Panama, I realized that even though I spoke about the fact that when somebody comes in to get adjusted physically, they're like a bunch of recycled atoms. That's all they are, man. There's the atoms have been floating around the universe for 15, 18 billion years, but the ones in their body in that particular arrangement are only a few months old. And this recycled bit of atoms is doing septillions of things all at the same time. Compared to their innate intelligence, I know literally next to nothing. So it was cool to not even try to know anything. What could I know other than the fact that, again, the greatest doctor in the universe walked in with this person? So again, I believed these things, but I realized after the first couple of missions that I was still prone to once in a while playing hero instead of healer. I still lapsed into fixing mode. I mean, one of the sad things about chiropractic adjustments is that they can be very effective at dealing with people's problems, if you haven't noticed. And so anyway, I was still prone to maybe doing a little more once in a while just to justify, whether it was justifying my fee or to justify their expectations or whatever it was. Okay, so it was a big learning for me. It was simpler to not do any of that stuff in Panama. It was much simpler. But the point was, I wanted to take that lesson and apply it here, even where it's harder. Okay, so in Panama, a lot of us attempted to learn the Sigafoose phrase, "I'll move the bone, God does the healing," right? And those of us who successfully, said that in Spanish, that was more than enough for the people. They would be lining up by the thousands based on that, right? But one doctor in particular he messed it up. He was telling people all day that he's going to move an egg, and God's going to do the healing, right? Because the words are very similar in Spanish. But the thing is, that was enough for people, and then we saw people carrying bushels of eggs in the next day when they were coming in for their adjustments. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but that's how it was. That all proved to me that it was definitely better off for us to stay silent. uh, anyway, so again, with no way to talk to people, with no way to discover what their opinion of what we were doing was, without hearing their stories or their problems, or being around to see any kind of results, and combined with the choice we made based on the sheer numbers of people that showed up to only adjust upper cervical, again, we were forced to rely on the chiropractic principle. Other than Sigafoose, I would say the 17 other chiropractors there had never operated strictly according to the principle before. And so in doing that, that's why it's a beautiful gift. We saw the amazing power of it. I mean, some people healed up before our eyes. People got up out of wheelchairs and walked, from an upper cervical adjustment. This was a big learning experience for me. And besides that, besides the things we saw, we also heard about a little girl. The first day on the first mission, a little girl in one of their special schools got her hearing restored. I had heard that story before in chiropractic, but the only one of the 18 of us who had ever seen that in their practice was, guess who?
Sigafoose.
Was Sigafoose. And again, why Sigafoose, not us? Well, apparently we're chiropractors here in Panama, but at home we're doing something else. Okay, and the whole country lit up.
True.
Apparently between the third and the fourth missions, the crime rate in Panama City went down significantly. John mentioned something at the beginning about the world changing through chiropractic. We saw it happen. We would show up in the middle of Panama City somewhere in a cigar store, and all of a sudden they'd be like clapping for us. I mean, like, how do they even know who we are? Maybe the fact that we were gringos and there weren't that many. But they would say something like, "Oh, you're the doctors who are making everybody in Panama smile." And we heard this after on the first mission. I worked in this special school. I don't even know what's wrong with these kids. They just didn't look like they were there the first few days. But by the third day, there's a light in their eyes. By the fourth day, I want to take them all home. And on the last day, they throw a lunch for us. Every single teacher and administrator and janitor in the school apparently got up and made a speech in Spanish. We're not understanding any of it, but everybody's crying. And we get the last speaker, who was the administrator of the school. We heard the translation later. She said, I've been here for 27 years. I've been the administrator of the school. These kids have been exposed to every conceivable healthcare intervention you can imagine, and we have never seen anything impact the kids like we have in these 5 days. And she tells us about the little girl who got her hearing restored, which we'd already heard, but she told us a whole bunch of other stories that we hadn't heard. And then she says, but the most common thing, the thing everybody's talking about, the thing that the parents are mentioning when they drop the kids off or pick them up in the afternoon is that these kids are smiling.
No.
And I don't know if you guys are parents, but I can't even begin to imagine coming home from work one day and seeing my 6-year-old kid smiling for the first time in his life. I mean, what's that worth? And I was the valedictorian at LACC, guys, and I can guarantee you we did not learn a smile adjustment. I don't have a protocol for that I know of. So, Sid Williams used to drop the keys on stage, and he'd say that the chiropractic principle was as reliable as the keys hitting the ground. I just wonder what all our practices might be like if we had as much faith in above, down, inside out as we do in gravity. That was the lesson for me, because it changed because of these missions. It changed from a belief to a knowing, from a belief to a truth, from a belief to a duh. And then I wonder, what would our lives be like if we had as much faith in the principles of love and connection and abundance as we do in gravity? If we knew that spiritual laws, as Jimmy Parker used to say, were just as exacting and reliable as physical laws are. If we lived these principles and we chose by them, whether or not it was easy or expedient or politically correct, or whether a patient is questioning us about them or anything like that. And I realize I'm preaching to the choir here, but I happen to like preaching to the choir. Maybe you can all sing for me.
Sometimes the choir needs a reminder of the chorus.
Well, the choir always needs a reminder, because I know I need a reminder. Okay. So yeah, I'm suggesting that even though I realize this audience is probably doing a tremendously wonderful job already of being shepherds for the chiropractic principle, maybe we could all do a little bit better. Is that possible? Please say yes.
Yes.
A little bit every day, a
Yeah,
little bit every day.
because I know even to this
Yes.
day, there are times when I'm at least tempted to bend a principle or compromise on a principle, or again, it's easy to do. But I don't want to be I don't want to be like Groucho Marx, who apparently once said, "Those are my principles. If you don't like them, I have others." Yeah. And
Now, I got a question for you, Stu. When you went on
yes.
the mission trip, I mean, you're talking about how much you learned there. Uh, how long did it take you to change who you were, who you brought to the table? Um, and how did you solidify that within your own experience?
Well, I don't know how long. I don't know if I'm there yet, John, but but
That's a good answer.
things changed a lot almost immediately, especially after the second mission when I started doing the box on the wall. That was the one sort of physical thing I changed. But again, I had loved the box on the wall idea. I believed in the box on the wall, but the Panama missions gave me the absolute certainty and faith that I would be okay. So
Wow.
that was one thing I did. But I simplified from that day forward, all the way through my career. I simplified. I talked less. I started doing silent days once a month in my office. I did things to sort of match where I wanted to be in consciousness. And then, the story you referenced, John, that happened right after the second mission, you know, and really, really quickly, a guy, A gentleman came in and he wanted me to fix his shoulder. And for 2 months, I told him I'm not a shoulder fixer. I was the valedictorian in shoulder fixing, but I don't do that anymore. That's not what I do, right? I didn't tell him that, but and I'm thinking after 2 months of me explaining over and over again why I'm not dealing with his shoulder and wondering why he keeps coming in. He also would bring his little 5-year-old with him every single time he came in, never let me check her. I bugged him about that. Anyway, long story short, I find out as I'm trying to tell him he's in the wrong place that he's not beating up his little girl anymore. She tells me,
Mm.
Emma. It was quite a moment. And it was a proud moment, man. It was like, I could electrocute this guy's shoulder. I could manipulate this guy's shoulder. I know how to do that. I never touched his shoulder. I adjusted him and loved him and held a vision. I didn't like him much, but I but I held a vision of his, highest healing, and apparently he got it. I mean, I'm John. I'm so glad you're telling this story. It's because it's a beautiful, perfect chiropractic story. I didn't know he was hitting his child. If I knew he was hitting her, I would have had legal responsibilities and stuff, right? I'm happy I didn't know.
Yep.
And he got exactly what he needed. He did not need me to make his shoulder feel better so he could hit her harder. So yes, it was beautiful to see that kind of thing happen, like so shortly after I'd made this decision, this choice to be that chiropractor, the chiropractor. And I've always believed that chiropractic and chiropractors can be a huge factor in creating the kind of world we want to live in, a healthier, saner, better world. And maybe, especially now with all the divisiveness and anger and chiropractic principles can still be a big part of the solution. And you and I, again, are the shepherds of this principle. And as John said, the only ones. So maybe this is the time where we can look at where we might even be tempted to bend our principles or don't always follow them or say something like Groucho Marx said. So again, I know I'm preaching to the choir, but as I also said, and I know you all do a better job of shepherding for the principle than the average Dr. Joe does, but maybe we can all do a little better.
And I think the simple place to start is something I heard Jim Sigafoose say one day. He said, the reason you don't see any miracles is because you don't expect them. And he says, if you don't have any faith in the principle, you can't expect them.
Thank you, John. I have to add to my list. Yes, that was another lesson I learned. You're right. That's part of intention. I mean, in Panama, I did not have a single, except when I saw somebody in a wheelchair or with some obvious disability, maybe for a millisecond, I had a thought of what was wrong with them. But other than that, I had absolutely zero focus on what was wrong with anybody. My 100% focus was on what is right with everybody, and that means a lot. They have the greatest doctor in the universe within them. That's pretty right. They're they're doing 420 septillion things in every 1 second. That's pretty good. I can't do better than that, but I can interfere with that, can't I? With my minimal expectations or my um, you know my beliefs about what's possible. So, as my physics teacher in high school taught us, the only thing in this universe that's impossible is putting toothpaste back into the tube the way it came out. Other than that, anything is possible. And you and I deal with unlimited possibilities every time we walk into the room. It seems like a good closing statement right there.
I think that was something else too. I got to tell you, because you shared so much that people need to remember a lot of us, we're all long in the tooth here, but the bottom line is a lot of us need to hear it again and again and again. Everything you said tonight about intention, opening your heart, clearing your mind, getting quiet, right? That's the quiet days. And then staying true to the principle, like, can you believe in the ADO principle the same as you can believe in gravity? Thank you so much. I know Leo has a story I want him to tell because it's very funny.
Let me unmute. Hold
You're
on.
unmuted.
I am? Okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Stu, I don't know if you remember at the gathering in Pennsylvania. I forget, it was like one of those places like the Mount Airy Lodge or something, and you were like helping out Sigafoose and who's that other old fella who was there with you too?
Dick Santo?
No, not Dick Santo. He was there too, but the other guy that Cecil?
Cecil Collins.
Cecil Collins. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I was like the proctor for the person that was breathing while they were doing the thing, and then she slipped into like, the meditation, and I was like, patting her hand and giving her water. And then it was my turn. And I remember I'm listening to all the people sighing and, crying. And you come along and you just go like this to my chest, you go, let it go, man. And I slipped into like, I don't know. When I came to, and then she was like looking at me like, what the what kind of demons were in you? It was wild.
Oh man, I remember it very clearly, Leo.
That was crazy. It was really crazy.
That's awesome.
That
And
was a
Jeff,
holotropic. That was a holotropic breathing program, right?
Yeah.
yes, I believe Jeff Wack there was my first breathing partner at a gathering.
Really?
Yeah, that
19
was I forget when it was or where it was, but it was a while ago, and we've certainly been on that same kind of ideology of improving yourself to help others. And we just had kind of a mini version of that in Pennsylvania a couple of weeks ago at our fellowship gathering, and sat in a circle and did like 4 hours worth of some of the exercises, and
Nice.
channeling your energy and everybody else before us. So
Thank you.
thanks for all you do there, Stu.
Well,
Stu, are you still doing those gatherings? Are you doing them?
I do a workshop called Chiropractic from the Heart, but it's been almost exclusively in Europe.
Oh, in Europe. Okay.
I'm working on being what do they say? Something in your hometown.
Oh.
A prophet. So far nothing has really flown in the United States, but it's a long story how that Europe
Yeah.
thing happened. But so yes, I'm actually desirous of doing more of this in the United States.
That would be
So
great.
That'd be
yeah.
great. That would be
We should
great.
make it happen. Are you
I'm
there?
going to ask everybody to unmute and share some love with Dr. Stu.
Yeah, let me know. I and my daughter who's 30, she's old. Not as old as me, 37. She's never been to New York City, which is a tragedy and a sham.
Wow.
So we've been talking about a trip back there for a while. So yeah, maybe I'll reach out to some of you and see if we can get something going.
We should do that. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Were
Absolutely.
you there with Mark Hudson when you were there over in Europe?
Yeah, and he came to a couple of gatherings. That's where he heard me speak, and he invited me to speak at Chiro Europe in 2006 or something like that. So that was the beginning. Well, actually, the beginning was going over to Europe with Sigafoose, 1999, 2000, few years there. So that was the beginning. That was the beginning of me being an expat, so to speak. But nope, still live in the United States and still would love to serve chiropractors in the United States. So yeah, let's see if we can get this together. I'd love it.
That'd be
You
good.
still in Tahoe?
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Thanks,
Brian,
Stu.
Tony, Josh.
Hey there. Hey, Stu. My name's Josh Siegel. We've never met, but I remember Arnaud Brunier years ago was telling a story about you when I think one of your people on the table passed away. And he was just like, the space that you created is just, setting people free, whatever that means to them. It really was told about total freedom. And he shared that story, and it just, I've never met you. I've heard about you for years, but thank you for sharing your heart, and love and appreciate you.
Bless you, Josh. You sure that we haven't met? I'm sure we met at New Beginnings.
Mm.
I don't think so.
No, okay.
Not
All
not
right.
yet, not yet, not yet.
Okay. Well, yeah, sometimes past, future,
Yeah.
we get them confused. So I used to tell that story a lot, but I'll have to wait for another time for that story. Yeah. Thank you. That's what Chuck Ribley told me when he heard about it too. He said, I guess you've made yourself safe enough for people to pass in your presence or something like that. So I love people who can put a really positive spin on things.
Wow.
Anyway, thank you.
Stu,
All
I
right.
just wanted to say, Stu, I just wanted to say thanks a lot for coming on tonight. I've seen you at New Beginnings. What you said tonight hit home with me, especially the intention and the expectation part. The expectation of the results because the doctor was within is on duty all the time. That hit home. So I'm going to start expecting a lot more. Thanks
Cool.
for that.
Awesome. Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you, Stu. That was good, man.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. Appreciate it.
I
Thanks for
want to
loving
thank
what I
I
do.
want to thank everybody for coming on tonight. I don't want to keep it too late. It's already 9 o'clock here in New York. Stu, till we meet again, I look forward to seeing you at New Beginnings in one of them places. And if you
All
come
right.
to New York, reach out to us. We'll definitely get together or break bread.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody for coming on tonight, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
All
Thank you
right.
so
Knock 'em
much.
alive.
Thank-
Knock 'em alive, you guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Stu.
Stu.
Good night.
Thank you,
Thank
Stu.
you.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you.